Well, Pamela, thanks for joining the podcast today. I was so excited that we could get someone from Voces de la Frontera on the show this week to talk about all the May Day actions that we have coming up that are so important and so vital for all of us in Wisconsin and beyond to be involved in. But before we jump into that, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, anything you feel comfortable that you want to share?
Sure. So my name is Pamela Westphal. My pronouns are she, her. I'm originally from the Northeast Wisconsin area, specifically right around Appleton. I moved to Milwaukee a few years ago to study film at UWM. I graduated in 2021, and I've just kind of stuck around in the Milwaukee area ever since. In terms of how I got involved in politics, I have come from a proud union household. I grew up benefiting from a union. And as I grew up and got older, I realized the importance of having those like strong labor connections for all community members, for families, for children, for everybody. And currently, what I do now is I'm the director of the Youth Empowered in the Struggle program, which is the youth branch of Voces de la Frontera. So what I work on is I help students and teachers organize and build power in their communities, so that they know that they can fight back and they can fight against any of the cuts or the economic disadvantages that are handed to students and teachers in public school settings. So that's kind of a broad strokes of what I do at Voces.
Yeah, well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do. And I've got a huge heart for young people, so I really appreciate people who work with young people. That was a big part of my career as well. So empowering young people is something that, boy, you speak things like that. It gets me excited real quick, Pamela. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Let's
Of
back. I
course.
wanna I wanna dig in more to the specific that work that you're doing with young people because, well, partially because I'm really interested, but I think a lot of people would love to hear more about it. But let's back up. I don't ever want to assume people know things, and I have so much interaction with Voces de la Frontera on a regular basis because of the work that we do at Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice. So often I assume, well, obviously everybody knows about Voces and the incredible work that they do, but I don't want to assume that. There could be somebody listening this morning who maybe has heard of Voces but doesn't know what they do, or maybe has never even heard about the organization at all. So I want to make sure, first and foremost, everybody's aware of, what Voces de la Frontera does and why they exist. So share a little bit about who you are as an organization.
Sure. So, Voces de la Frontera is the largest immigrants' rights organization here in the state of Wisconsin. And we offer a whole boatload of different services for folks. We offer ESL classes, citizenship classes. We also offer reduced cost legal services for folks who need help applying for green cards or DACA or other various forms of like whatever legal services you need. We also provide a lot of volunteers who help out with just anything and everything. So that could be, we do court accompaniments, which is where if somebody needs an ally to go to court with them, say it's like an ICE check-in or something, and they need somebody there, we provide those services as well. And kind of the big thing that we've been working on lately is our community defense network. And with that, the Community Defense Network basically provides know your rights trainings, a 24/7 hotline that people can call if there are ICE sightings in their neighborhood. And then also we are expanding our mutual aid efforts so that if there are community members who need, whether it's, food, toiletries, whatever they might need, we have services provided to them.
Yeah, and it's an incredible network, and it's statewide. So I want to make sure that we get that out there because Wisconsin Faith Voices is statewide as well. So if you're listening to this today and you're not in the Madison or Milwaukee area, know that the services that Voices offers, spreads to your area as well. I know, talking to both of our good friend Luis, and one time he was sharing that he was doing a Know Your Rights training in a bar or in a barn in Western Wisconsin once. response. And so this is an organization that will do whatever it takes to get to the people that you need to get to do the things that need to be done. And the other thing before we jump into May Day activities is I want you to share a little bit about how people can get involved through Voces because there's so many powerful volunteer opportunities. Specifically, I know there's a hotline, and I always encourage people, and in the show notes, I will put the hotline phone number. I always encourage people to just save that in your cell phone so that you're not looking for it if you see ICE somewhere and know you need to call that hotline. But also the people that are answering those calls and the people that are going out to confirm the potential sightings are all volunteer based. And so share a little bit about the volunteer opportunities that there are specifically in that community defense piece.
Sure. So, yeah, we're always looking for volunteers to help with the hotline. Specifically, um, it is a bilingual hotline or a multilingual hotline. We primarily operate obviously in English and Spanish, but if um, other languages such as like Arabic or Farsi, or I believe we had a request to do a Know Your Rights training one time in Haitian Creole, which is very interesting. But I would encourage folks, if you do know a language, to talk to go to our website. We do have a volunteer tab that you can apply for. And be able to work on the hotline. An additional like volunteer opportunity is working with our team of verifiers across the state. So what a verifier is we will get a report from the hotline, and somebody will say like, we saw these federal agents on the corner of this street and this street in, this city. And then our verifiers will go out and talk to either like the store, the say like the people who were around there, to say like, what did you see? Did you get any photos? Did you get any videos? And they verify if that was ICE or if that was like other federal agents. And then in terms of other volunteer opportunities, we do also have citizenship classes that people can volunteer with to help folks memorize the questions for the citizenship tests. And yeah, we also just have like a lot of other general opportunities that you can apply to as well. Another one, I think I touched on it earlier, but another big opportunity that we have is being trained on how to do like a court accompaniment. Again, for anybody who uh, needs just like an ally with them while they go visit like any kind of court or any important legal procedure, like just having them there to, um, you know, be their ally and be their advocate for them as they go through a really stressful process.
Yeah, yeah, so many great opportunities, and Vocis couldn't do what they do without the amazing help of volunteers from across the state. Going back to that hotline real quick as well. I know sometimes people will feel like, well, I don't know if I'm right or I'm wrong. I don't know if I should call that. I don't want to gunk up the phone lines. And Pamela and I are here to let you know that if you think maybe you saw something, don't hesitate. That's what that number is for. Let Vocis figure out the validity of whatever it is that happened or that you saw, but we wouldn't want to miss something because you were not sure. It doesn't matter if you're sure or not. If you think you saw something, give that number a call.
Yeah, and I will definitely reiterate that it is absolutely important to call that hotline and report this. It's also important that if you do see something, please try to take photos or videos, because that helps us a lot. And I will say, please do not believe everything you see on social media. I forget the exact timeline, but I believe it was like 2 months ago or something. There was like a rumor, specifically in Milwaukee, about like there were like 100 ICE agents at the Hilton hotels, and that spread like wildfire over social media. And it is very, very important for us to have like um, a documented case on our end from the hotline so that again our verifiers can go out and verify if ICE was actually sighted in that area or if it was like, maybe police officers were doing a training or there were other types of federal agents. So it's very, very critical that that gets entered in on the hotline.
Yeah, and also I want to encourage people, if if you hear something like that, if you see something like that from somebody on social media or whatever, or it's just a rumor going around, let's not put it on social media. Let's not create this firestorm. Let's make sure we validate everything with these incredible organizations that are doing the work to make sure that what we're doing and what we're hearing is right and correct. That's why it's so vital to stay connected, at a core level with organizations like Voces. And if you have those questions, again, that's what that hotline is there for. You can call that hotline, and things will get figured out without a doubt. There are trainings going on for these opportunities as well. If you want information on that, just reach out to me directly at matt@wifaithvoices.org. I'm connected with Voces. We're very careful about how we put out information because we wouldn't want the wrong person showing up at a training. And so there's a bit of a vetting process just to get on the communication list to get that information to you. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out to me. Also, just keep your eye on Voces website, which is vdlf.org. And the main things that you would need to know are on there. And we'll talk a little bit more about May Day, but I'm sure that's up on the website as well. But before we get into May Day, share a little bit more. Like I said, I'm really fascinated about the work that you do with young people. So maybe first share, where your passion for working with young people came from, and then a little bit more detail about what you do in your role.
So in terms of my passion for working with younger people, I, like I said earlier, I grew up in a union household and also specifically a public school union household. I went to public schools my whole life, K through 12, and in college as well. And that's very much a point of pride for me. Um, and because of that, I find public schools are actually like very ripe for organizing and making change in our communities. A lot of public school teachers are already members of a union. The students and the parents are very connected to the community. And the school kind of operates sometimes as that hub, for everybody to kind of be connected in that way. And how that kind of plays out with the work that I do for Youth Empowered in the Struggle is that, um, you know, specifically one of the campaigns we're working on in MPS right now is fighting back against the cuts that a lot of teachers are facing. So our new superintendent, Brenda Casilius, recently proposed cutting over 200 positions for teachers. And these are like, pretty vital roles like paraprofessionals, assistant principals, a lot of music and art teachers are also getting cut. And, the students see that in their daily lives. They come in one day and they say, like, oh, my favorite choir teacher just got cut. I don't like this. And then we at Yes kind of can turn to them and say, like, okay, well, how do you want to fight back against this? And, like we try to give them the tools to say, like, you can fight back against this. You can say that we want our teachers to be fully funded. So that's kind of one of the big things we're working on. Another one that we've worked on previously and are still currently working on is providing a nutritious and um, well-funded school lunch program. So specifically at MPS schools, all breakfasts and lunches are free. However, it's not always like the best options. And so, yes, students, a couple years ago, I believe in 2022, were put out a survey saying like, hey, what's something about school that you wish could change? And the number one thing was the lunch. The lunch is not the best. We want to change the lunch. And especially like there were a lot of students who could not eat the lunch because it was not kosher or halal.
Mm.
And because Milwaukee Public Schools operates with like a lot of culturally diverse students, um, that was also a very critical part in organizing for a more complete school lunch program. And we're still able to continue that fight today, where now we have fairly regular meetings to discuss the implementation of these changes and how we can still improve school lunch. Because it's something that students are eating it every day and it's um, vitally important. So that's kind of just like the highlights of some of the major programs we're working on. Um, and in general, like the program itself, Youth Empowered in the Struggle, I recently joined it in November. So I'm still catching up on a lot of the history, but even there's been a little other smaller touch points throughout the years that Yes has been a part of. So specifically on the Marquette University campus, there's a scholarship in place called the Dreamers Scholarship that is specifically for undocumented or DACA recipient students that was founded by Yes students when they originally organized for that, I believe in 2016. And, currently also a lot of students in Racine are organizing to get their schedule changed because they have a block scheduling system, which is where they are sitting in a classroom for 90 minutes. And if you've ever worked with students, you know that that's a really long time for them. And so they are trying to organize to fight for a schedule that, you know, allows for not only like educational learning, but also more social and emotional learning, and also uh, providing more prep time for teachers because they always need more prep time. So that's just kind of the overview, the statewide overview of like the touch points that Yes has had in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's that's just it's wildly powerful. I mean, I think, back a million years ago when I was a student in high school, I don't think I ever thought I had a voice in my desire to want to change things. I think I just accepted that, okay, well, that's something that the school decided or the administration decided, and it just is what it is. So I can complain about it, but I never once thought there was anything I could do about it because I didn't have that voice, that person, that leader coming to me saying that you don't have to just accept this. There's ways that you can, combat it or fight against it. And there's ways that you can push toward change. And that's something that I really didn't figure out till, early on in my adult life. So the opportunity for young people in our state to have this opportunity of empowerment to realize that you have a voice. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we in just about every area of the nonprofit world, all of us are fighting to give people a voice and make sure that people understand that they have a voice and understand how to use it. So to do that at a young level like that, to address something, and we could joke about saying, well, yeah, school lunches are never very good or nutritious, but what if they were? Because there's all sorts of incredible school districts that are providing really nutritious, good meals. And so it's possible. We know it's possible, and there's all sorts of opportunities in models that we could take on. And so, but somebody has to say it, right? Somebody has to be that person. And I believe with anything, if those voices can rise up from as grassroots a level as possible. And in this case, the people who are being affected, which is the students, if that's where the voice can start for the change, that's the most powerful option. So thank you again for working with students in that capacity. All right, let's turn our attention to May Day. Share with us a little bit. I mean, a lot of times people outside of this circle would hear the word May Day and they will remember a time when they were growing up, and May Day was a time when your teachers had you go outside and pick some flowers and give them to your mom. But May Day now it has a very different take to it, and it's an opportunity. Speaking of empowerment, speaking of the voice of the people rising up, that's really what May Day is. Last year, I was, really thankful to be down at the Capitol in Madison, and I know in Milwaukee there was a huge, I mean, tens of thousands of people coming out to just fight for what is right and fight for the rights of citizens that we're surrounded by every day. So share with us a little bit about what May Day is. Maybe let's start like on a little bit more of a corporate level. Let's just say, okay, May Day, because this is not just Wisconsin. This is something that's happened throughout our country. So share what May Day is, and then we'll jump into how we can get involved with May Day here in Wisconsin.
For sure. So May 1st initially started, I believe in like 1887 or something, as International Workers' Day. And that was a day where workers had off to celebrate like all the hard work they do every year and to just have a day to, take to the streets and have a great party and just have the day off and rest on our laurels. Now in the US, obviously, we have Labor Day, which got moved to September because I believe I believe this happened during the Red Scare, where like there was because May Day had an association with like a lot of socialist and communist causes that they wanted to kind of dissuade the workers from having that day off. However, over the years, this has been sort of reclaimed by not only like Latino or immigrant workers' rights groups and like workers' rights groups in general. Specifically in on May on May Day in 2006, we had around like 70,000 people march for Voces. And that was originally supposed to be kind of, they called it the Great American Boycott. I believe it was also protesting against, the ongoing war in the Middle East. And also, it was a general strike of, undocumented workers to protest HR 4437, which was an immigration law that was being implemented at the time. And ever since then, Voces has hosted a May Day march in both Milwaukee and Madison every year ever since. And this year, how it's going to look is if you're in Milwaukee, we're going to be starting at the Voces office on the south side, which is 733 West Historic Mitchell Street. And then we'll be marching to the Federal Building downtown. If you are in Madison, we'll be starting at the Library Mall on 715 State Street at noon, and then march to the state capitol. Um, and um, May Day is also on a Friday this year, so hopefully we'll be able to turn out a lot of other people this time around. But yeah, it's going to be just like a celebration of like all the hard work we do every year. And also, I bring up both workers' rights and immigrant rights because a lot of those things are intertwined. Here in America and here, well, in the world, we live under capitalism and everybody has to work. But that's a little bit more complicated if you are, undocumented or an immigrant in general. And so the really powerful piece for me for May Day is like tying together those two causes and showing people that like these fights are very similar and we need to fight these fights together. Um, and it's really important that we have things like May Day where people can take off and support each other. We've even gotten, small businesses like some, like at least like 100 or so every year who, say to us, like, we're closing on May Day so that our workers can join in the march. And that's just something that's like always really critical for us to, collectively come together and demonstrate power and say that like, this is what we demand these changes in our community. And in terms of like the themes for what we are demanding in our communities this year, we've got our statewide demands of stopping 287G agreements, ICE out of our courts, schools, and communities. And to close, at least here in Milwaukee, we have a detention center that's being built kind of in the Brown Deer area, and we're asking that to be closed. And then in terms of national demands, we've got abolish ICE, citizenship for all, and an economy for all. Um, and yeah, we highly encourage folks to come on out to it. Take the day off of work, do what you got to do, and build it up. Just because we are seeing, people are a little bit more scared this year to come on out, just because of the increase in both, ICE raids and the increase in just ICE activity in general, which is completely understandable. But I would really encourage then, if you feel safe to come out, please come out. And also, if you are an ally, it would be really critical for allies to come on out to us as well.
Yeah, and I do want to reiterate, if no, if somebody is a little hesitant to go out because they're worried about safety, we understand that. We all know what's been going on this year, and we do first and foremost want you to feel like you're safe. But I want to make sure that you know that these rallies and these marches, anything that Voces de la Frontera is involved with, is highly organized, well run, very safe. I was in the march, like I mentioned, last year at the Capitol, and it was, highly organized, very safe. Law enforcement were involved. This is done well. This isn't just a bunch of people going to the streets, without thinking through things. That is not it at all. So, and I do want to encourage people. This is a time, we're living in a time where there are people that are afraid to leave their homes even because of the immigration enforcement that's happening throughout our country. And so this is an opportunity for those of us, like myself, who, because of this, the color of my skin and because of how long my family's been in this country, I can walk out of my door without that same fear. And so there are times when we need to stand. Sometimes we stand shoulder to shoulder with our immigrant community by standing by ourselves because they can't be there. And this can be a great time when allies can come together. And I am so hopeful that this is so large this year that those who are enforcing these inhumane principles and the ways the way things have been happening this year with the Department of Homeland Security is uncalled for. It's not how this should be happening, and we need to stand together against it. And so, just to be clear, we're asking people to take the day off of work, take the day off of school, close down your business, whatever you need to do to be there. We're asking you to do that. And I struggle using the word winning, losing, because in a situation like we're in, we're all losing, but we need to overcome this. We need to overcome this authoritarian nature that we're all dealing with right now. And in order to do that, we're going to all have to sacrifice. And the sacrifice of taking a day off of work or closing your business for a day, I think, is well worth getting involved in the struggle in a large scale like this, for May Day. And we've seen nonviolent resistance throughout our country this year, and we're seeing how it's making a difference. It might not be as fast as we want it to be, but we're seeing things slowly but surely, bend toward justice. And but that's going to take a sustained effort. And just because we have a day when people march, that's not the end all be all. So what we're asking people to do is come out for May Day and consider what you can do in an ongoing fashion to continue on this fight, because May Day is the day when we all get together, but this fight that we're in, this struggle that we're in, is a daily one, and we all need to do our part. So what are other ways beyond May Day? So we're going to get everybody out to May Day, but then when we're on May 2nd, what can people be doing to engage in this battle?
Sure. So, after May Day, in terms of like other, ways that you can fight back, I would say, get to know your community members. We had recently, um, I had recently learned from some organizers who were in Minneapolis when the peak of the ICE raids were happening there. And they talked a lot about how it was a lot of just neighbors coming together. It was a lot of people who were, just happened to know each other, getting together and saying, like, what are you saying? What am I seeing? Like, so I would highly encourage people to, like, it's really important right now to get to know your neighbors and to get to know your community members. I would say also, uh, if you do have the ability to attend like a Know Your Rights training or some other kind of training from Voces, I would highly encourage you to know that, to do that. Because also I believe that like having the knowledge is very powerful. And having that like knowledge about like if ICE were to come to my doorstep, this is what I should do. Or if I see a neighbor where ICE is at their doorstep, this is what I should do. Like that is always much more powerful, and being armed with that knowledge is always good to have on your side. Because it can feel really overwhelming. Don't get me wrong. I've been overwhelmed more times than I can count in the last couple of months. But because of like the knowledge that I have, I now know like, okay, if I do see ICE in my community, this is what I should do. And so I would highly encourage people to attend a Know Your Rights training if you do have the option to do so. Um, what else? Another big thing, obviously, it's a midterm election year. So I would highly encourage people to, you know, listen to or like, engage with the candidates, listen to what their issues they're talking about, talk to them about immigration reform, and talk to them about like the other, um, critical things that are happening right now in terms of like affordability, wages, rent, all of those things. Like those are really critical issues that we're going to be fighting for both in the state, at the federal level, and even at the local level. So I would highly encourage people to, you know, always double check your voter registration and if you have community members who maybe this is their first time voting, like talking to them and showing them how to either register themselves to vote or like what issues are really critical for them right now.
Yeah, oh, such great advice. I love that idea. When we do something like May Day and we do like a huge rally, and again, we're going to see tens of thousands of people in these marches in Milwaukee and Madison. And sometimes, that can confuse us to think like the work is huge, the work is, which it is. But when we're talking about ourselves individually, actually the work becomes very, very small and localized because like what you mentioned of just being engaged within the context of your community, that's absolutely without a doubt the best thing that you can do. I remember talking to a pastor and he's actually in Minneapolis, and when everything was happening with the ICE rates in Minneapolis, he was asked, well, what is a piece that you're doing to fight against this? And he said, well, one thing I do is he had a neighbor who was a second generation immigrant who was documented, but she was scared out of her mind without, understandably, and she had a dog. So he said, well, one thing I do is I make sure I go on the walk that she takes every morning with her dog so that she feels safe. And when he said that, I was like, that is one of the most beautiful, powerful things I've heard because there's so much power to saying I'm going to stand side by side, or in this case, walk side by side with my neighbor. And how do we do this on a local level? I've had people call me from, tiny towns in Wisconsin just talking about how they're organizing in their communities. It's so important that we make this valid in our own context. And so understanding that, what that means in your context. And again, we're all here to help. So if you need help doing that, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Voces. We will help you, in whatever way you need help to get involved in this action. And then as Pamela said, we cannot reiterate enough the importance of the upcoming midterm elections. We've seen for the last two Supreme Court elections, we saw great voter turnout. We know that Wisconsin knows that their voice matters. And one of the things that we're encouraging people to do is absolutely first and foremost, know where you're going to vote, be informed about the candidates that are out there, understand if you're registered, all of those things. And then what we're telling people is do that and make sure everybody around you also knows where to vote, how to vote, what the candidates stand on. So think about your family, think about your friends, think about your community, et cetera, your coworkers, wherever that seems appropriate. We really want to make sure that everybody understands what's going on and keep connected to organizations like Faith Voices and Voces, because when information comes out, because we've seen a lot of things that are making us concerned about having a free and fair election in November, and we're going to we're going to fight to make sure that happens as best as we can, and so just stay informed at what's going on in every way, shape, or form. We always say everything leads to voter engagement. At the end of the day, that's going to matter, and so keep that in mind. Well, Pamela, thank you so much for joining me. I know you've got a million things going on, especially with May Day coming up in just a couple weeks here. So please know from the bottom of my heart, it matters a lot to me that you would take a little bit of time out. Again, everybody who's listening, adjust your schedule, travel if you need to, do whatever you need to do to be a part of this and to get involved. And if you can't make it there in person on May 1st, again, just listen back to this podcast for ways that you can get involved in a regular basis. And wherever you are across Wisconsin, there's ways for you to get involved and get engaged, and feel free to reach out to Voces or to Faith Voices, and we're happy to get you plugged in and doing your part. So thank you, Pamela. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me on.